Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Kevin Knox's boots crunched on the wet autumn leaves carpeting the sidewalk as he walked hand in hand with his son from Willamette Elementary. The familiar weight of Ari's small hand in his own grounded him, a reminder of what truly mattered in his life. "Dad, can we stop for ice cream?" Ari asked, his 8-year-old face brightening with hope. Kevin checked his watch. "Not today, buddy. Mom texted she's making dinner early." "But it's Tuesday." "Mom never cooks on Tuesday." Kevin raised an eyebrow. Lynette's schedule had become increasingly unpredictable lately. Tuesday evenings were usually reserved for her environmental lobbying meetings, a convenient explanation for her late returns home. Something had changed as they rounded the corner onto their tree-lined street. Kevin noticed an unfamiliar silver SUV parked in their driveway. "Looks like we got a new car," Kevin said, more to himself than to Ari. Beside him, Ari's steps slowed, then stopped altogether. His small hand suddenly gripped Kevin's with unexpected strength. "What's wrong, bud?" Kevin asked, kneeling to meet his son's eyes that Ari's face had drained of color. He stared at the vehicle, his body rigid. "I don't want to get in. Why not?" Kevin asked, his military-honed instincts now on high alert. That Ari's voice dropped to a whisper. "Look in the trunk." Kevin felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Oregon autumn air. He stood, giving Ari's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Wait here on the porch, okay? I'll check it out." He approached the vehicle, fishing the spare key fob from his pocket. Lynette must have left it on the counter that morning. He pressed the trunk release, watching as the hydraulic system slowly raised the hatch. Kevin's breath caught at his throat. Inside lay a blood-stained tarp, folded hastily and partially concealing an empty nylon rope package. Tucked against the sidewall was a small, colorful backpack, the kind elementary school kids used. It wasn't Ari's. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt beneath Kevin's feet. The disciplined engineer in him cataloged every detail, while the father in him flashed hot with protective fury. He took several quick photos with his phone, then carefully closed the trunk. Walking back to Ari, he forced a calm expression. "Just some grocery bags and gym stuff," he lied, hating the necessity of it. "Let's go inside." Ari didn't move. "That's not Mom's car." A man was driving it. Kevin's jaw tightened. "What man, Ari?" "Mom's friend. The one who takes people into the woods. Wendell Pace, the wilderness tour guide." Kevin had met him twice at Lynette's work functions. The man had seemed pleasant enough, if overly familiar with his wife. Now, pieces were clicking into place with sickening clarity. "Where did you see this car?" Kevin asked gently. "Yesterday, when Mom picked me up from school. She said you were busy, but I knew you weren't because Tuesday is your work-from-home day." Kevin nodded, his mind racing. "Let's get inside, buddy. I need to think." As he guided his son up the walkway, Kevin felt a familiar sensation spreading through his chest, not panic, but the cold, calculated focus that had served him well during his military service. Something was deeply wrong. His wife was lying, and his son might be in danger. The electrical engineer's methodical mind began formulating a plan. Over the next week, Kevin maintained an outward calm that belied the storm brewing inside him. He watched Lynette with new eyes, cataloging changes that he'd previously attributed to work stress or the natural evolution of their 12-year marriage. The late nights had increased in frequency. 3 times that week, she'd returned after midnight, her excuses ranging from budget emergency meetings to donor dinners. Her clothes carried unfamiliar scents, not just perfume, but something woodsy and masculine. Most telling was her behavior around Ari. Where once she'd been an attentive, if somewhat distant mother, now she seemed to avoid their son entirely. When they were together, her smiles seemed forced, her attention distracted. That on Thursday evening, Kevin sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, pretending to review electrical schematics while actually researching surveillance equipment. Lynette breezed into the room, car keys jingling. "Environmental committee meeting tonight." "Don't wait up." Kevin looked up, his face neutral. "Seems like a lot of meetings lately." "We're fighting a massive timber proposal," she replied smoothly. "The hours are crazy right now." He nodded, noting how she didn't meet his eyes. "Need any help with the technical aspects?" Environmental impact analyses use the same modeling I do for power grid systems. For a moment, uncertainty flashed across her face. No, we have specialists for that. Besides, you wouldn't understand the politics. Probably not, Kevin conceded, returning to his laptop. Drive safe. After she left, he walked up to Ari's room. His son sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by Lego bricks. Hey, buddy, Kevin said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Can I ask you something important? Ari nodded, eyes serious beyond his years. Has Mom said anything to you about going on a trip? Ari's hand stilled. She said we might go to a special cabin soon. Just me and her. Not with me. Ari shook his head. She said you had too much work. But I told her I wouldn't go without you. Kevin's heart constricted. What did she say to that? She got mad. Said sometimes families need breaks from each other. Ari looked up, eyes glistening. I don't want a break from you, Dad. Kevin pulled his son into a tight hug. That's not going to happen, I promise. That night, after Ari was asleep, Kevin drove to a hardware store 40 minutes away and purchased 8 wireless security cameras, motion sensors, and an external hard drive. He paid cash. The next day, he took a rare day off work. While Lynette was at her office and Ari at school, Kevin methodically installed cameras throughout the house in the living room smoke detector, behind the kitchen clock, within a bookshelf in the hallway. The garage received special attention. Kevin installed 2 cameras with clear views of Lynette's new SUV, positioning them among the ceiling-mounted storage boxes where they wouldn't be noticed. When Lynette returned that evening, Kevin greeted her with casual news. I upgraded our home security system today, he mentioned over dinner. Been meaning to do it for months. What was wrong with the old one? She asked, her fork pausing midway to her mouth. Outdated technology, Kevin replied. This one's got better motion detection, remote monitoring, all the modern features. Sound expensive. Kevin shrugged. Worth it for peace of mind. That night, as they prepared for bed, Kevin noticed how Lynette kept her phone close, angled away from him when texts arrived. When she showered, he considered checking it, but decided against it. Digital forensics would leave traces. He needed to be smarter than that. Instead, he lay awake beside her, listening to her breathing, wondering how the woman he'd married could have transformed into this stranger. Sleep didn't come until near dawn. 3 days passed before the cameras captured anything significant. Kevin was reviewing footage on his secure laptop in his downtown office when he saw the garage door opening at 1:17 a.m., long after Lynette had supposedly gone to bed that a man's figure slipped inside. Tall, bearded, dressed in outdoor gear, Wendell Pace. Moments later, Lynette appeared, wearing only a silk robe. They embraced immediately, kissing with the familiarity of longtime lovers that Kevin's hands clenched into fists, but he forced himself to keep watching, to gather information rather than react emotionally. The footage had no audio, but he could see them talking intently between kisses. Wendell gestured emphatically. Lynette nodded. She glanced nervously toward the door leading to the house. Kevin switched to the second garage camera, which offered a clearer angle of their faces. He enhanced the video quality and activated the lip-reading software he'd installed. Not perfect, but better than nothing. Fragments of their conversation appeared as text. Timetable moved up, Wendell seemed to say. Worried about Ari, Lynette replied. Cabin is ready. Kevin's suspects, getting rid of the burden, need freedom. Cabin that's already cleaned. Kevin's blood ran cold. He rewound and replayed several times, confirming what he'd seen. There was no ambiguity in their intimate touches, their conspiratorial expressions. And the word burden, it could only refer to him that he copied the footage to an encrypted drive and closed his laptop. For several minutes, he sat motionless, processing the implications. His military training had prepared him for betrayal in combat situations, but nothing had prepared him for this betrayal from within his own home, from the woman who had sworn to love him, from the mother of his child. That evening, Kevin stopped at the house of his neighbor, Delora Brandt. The retired nurse had lived next door for the entire 8 years they'd been in the house. Her late husband had been a police detective, and something in her sharp eyes told Kevin she missed little that happened on their street. Delora answered the door in gardening clothes, soil still on her gloves. Kevin, this is unexpected. Sorry to bother you, Delora. Could I have a few minutes of your time? She studied his face. You look like you've seen a ghost. Come in. In her kitchen, over strong black coffee, Kevin chose his words carefully. Have you noticed any unusual visitors at our house recently? Maybe when I'm at work. Delora set down her mug. You mean besides the wilderness guide with the fancy truck? He's been coming around for about 3 months now. Always when you're gone. Kevin's jaw tightened. 3 months. Tuesdays and Thursdays, regular as clockwork. Sometimes stays for hours. She paused. Your wife introduced him as her colleague once. Said they were working on a forest conservation project. What's your impression of him? Delora's eyes narrowed. Remind me of cases my Frank used to work. Charming on the surface, but something not right underneath. She leaned forward. Kevin, I don't like a medal, but that man, he was involved in something bad a few years back. A missing hiker. Charges dropped, but Frank always said the evidence was there. Kevin felt his pulse quicken. What happened to the hiker? Never found. Delora sipped her coffee. Frank kept notes on cases that bothered him, even after retirement. I still have his files. If you want, I could look into it. I'd appreciate that, Kevin said. And Delora? This conversation never happened. She nodded gravely. Be careful, Kevin. Whatever's going on, don't underestimate them. Walking home in the gathering dusk, Kevin reviewed his options. Going to the police was premature. He had suggestions of wrongdoing, but no concrete evidence of criminal intent. A confrontation with Lynette would only alert her to his suspicions, and he needed more information. And most importantly, he needed to ensure Ari's safety. That night, he installed a small GPS tracker in Ari's favorite sneakers and programmed a new contact in his son's phone, a direct emergency line to Kevin that would work even if the phone was on silent mode. Remember our secret code? Kevin asked as he tucked his son into bed. Ari nodded solemnly. 3 clicks on any button means I need help. That's right, and I'll come right away, no matter where you are. Kevin smoothed back his son's hair. I love you, buddy. More than anything in the world. I love you too, Dad. Ari's eyes were already drooping with sleep. You won't let the bad people take me, right? Kevin's heart froze. What bad people, Ari? But his son had already drifted off, leaving Kevin to wonder just how much the perceptive child had overheard and how much danger they were truly in. The manila folder landed on Kevin's desk with a soft thud. Delora Brandt stood across from him, arms folded, her lined face solemn. Frank's notes on the Wendell Pace investigation, she said. I spent 2 days going through his old files. It's worse than I remembered. Kevin opened the folder. Inside were meticulously organized police reports, interview transcripts, and Frank Brandt's handwritten notes. The case involved a 26-year-old hiker who had disappeared 5 years earlier during a guided tour led by Wendell. The woman was never found, but investigators had discovered disturbing evidence in a remote cabin owned by Wendell, bleach-cleaned floors, a recently burned mattress, and the hiker's personal items buried in the woods nearby. Why weren't charges filed? Kevin asked. Flipping through the documents, Delora's mouth tightened. Read the last page. Kevin turned to Frank's final notes. Case compromised. Key evidence contaminated during collection. Chain of custody broken. Suspect's lawyer filed motion to dismiss granted. Query relationship between defense attorney T. Voss and forensic tech J. Mercer. T. Voss. Kevin looked up sharply. Trent Voss, Delora confirmed. Same lawyer who handled your wife's environmental trust last year. Kevin felt the pieces connecting. They've known each other for years then. And there's this. Delora placed a smaller envelope on the desk. Frank kept a journal about unusual neighborhood activity. Thought I was being paranoid, but I recorded dates when that Pace fellow visited your house. Look at the pattern. Kevin opened the envelope and found a handwritten calendar. Wendell's visits corresponded with days Kevin had business trips or late meetings. The planning was methodical, deliberate. There's something else you should know, Delora said, her voice dropping. Frank suspected Wendell wasn't working alone in the hiker case. He believed there was a female accomplice, someone who lured the victim to the tour in the first place. Kevin felt his stomach tighten. Any proof? Phone records showed the victim receiving calls from a prepaid cell phone purchased by a woman matching your wife's description. Delora's eyes were compassionate but direct. Frank couldn't prove it, but he always believed Lynette was involved somehow. Kevin sat back in his chair, processing this new information. Wendell wasn't the only one with a history, was he? Delora shook her head slowly. Before you married Lynette, she was briefly engaged to a man named Robert Keller. He disappeared during a camping trip in the Cascades. The case went cold. Everyone assumed he got lost in the wilderness. Everyone except Frank. My husband had good instincts. Delora gathered her purse. Kevin, whatever you're planning, be careful. These aren't amateurs. After Delora left, Kevin spread the documents across his desk, searching for connections, patterns, anything that might help him understand what he was facing. His engineering mind approached the problem methodically, tracing lines between events, people, and locations. One name kept appearing in multiple contexts: a cabin in the eastern Cascades, owned through a shell company that eventually traced back to Trent Voss. The same cabin mentioned in the hiker investigation. Kevin input the coordinates into his GPS. It was remote, accessible only by Forest Service roads, surrounded by thousands of acres of wilderness. The perfect place to make someone disappear. That night, as Lynette worked late again, Kevin sat with Ari at the kitchen table. Buddy, I need to go on a short trip tomorrow, he said carefully. Just for the day. You'll stay with Delora. Ari looked up from his homework. Is it because of Mom's secrets? Kevin paused, surprised by his son's perception. What secrets do you think Mom has? Ari fidgeted with his pencil. She talks on the phone when she thinks I'm asleep. About the cabin and about you being in the way. His young voice trembled slightly. And one time, I saw her and that man with the beard looking at pictures of the woods and talking about a special place where no one would find something. Kevin kept his expression neutral despite the alarm bells ringing in his mind. Why didn't you tell me this before? Mom said if I told you, you'd get mad and leave us. Ari's eyes filled with tears. But I don't think that's true. You wouldn't leave me, right? Never, Kevin said firmly, pulling his son into a hug. No matter what happens, I will always be here for you. Always. Later, after Ari was asleep, Kevin packed a small bag: hiking boots, a flashlight, lock-picking tools from his military days, a compact camera, and a handgun he'd kept secured since his service years. He hoped he wouldn't need the weapon, but preparation had kept him alive in Afghanistan. He wasn't taking chances now. Dawn was breaking over the Cascade Mountains as Kevin navigated the rough Forest Service road. His SUV bounced over roots and rocks, the GPS occasionally losing signal under the dense tree canopy. After nearly an hour on increasingly primitive roads, he reached a clearing where a small cabin stood, smoke curling from its chimney. Kevin parked behind a stand of Douglas firs and approached on foot, moving silently through the underbrush as he'd been trained. Through binoculars, he observed the cabin rustic but well-maintained, with solar panels on the roof and a late-model pickup truck parked outside. Wendell's truck. For hours, Kevin watched patiently. Shortly after noon, Wendell emerged, carrying fishing gear. He locked the cabin, climbed into his truck, and drove away down a different service road than the one Kevin had used. Waiting 15 minutes to ensure Wendell wouldn't return for forgotten items, Kevin approached the cabin. The lock on the main door was new and would take time to pick. Instead, he circled to a side window, using a glass cutter to create a small hole near the latch. Reaching through, he unlocked it and slipped inside. The cabin's interior was surprisingly modern: stainless steel appliances, high-end furniture, a sophisticated communication setup. Kevin photographed everything, moving methodically through the rooms. In the bedroom, he found women's clothing in Lynette's size hanging in the closet. On the nightstand, a framed photo of Lynette and Wendell together on a mountain summit, looking very much like a couple. Kevin's jaw tightened, but he continued his search. In a desk drawer, he discovered financial documents showing large transfers from an account in Lynette's name to offshore holdings. Another folder contained paperwork for new identities: passports, driver's licenses, birth certificates for Lynette and Ari, but with different names. They were planning to disappear. With his SON.I in the kitchen, Kevin found a calendar with dates circled in red. Next Friday, 1 week away, was marked departure. His own name appeared on the following Monday with a notation: missing report. They planned to be gone before anyone realized he was missing. Kevin took photos of everything, his hands steady despite the rage building inside him. Outside, behind the cabin, he discovered a shed with a heavy padlock. Using bolt cutters from his pack, he removed it and stepped inside. The shed's contents confirmed his worst fears: another blood-stained tarp similar to the one he'd seen in the SUV's trunk, boxes of zip ties, duct tape, bleach, and industrial cleaning supplies. Against one wall leaned a child's drawing in a plastic sleeve, Ari's unmistakable style. A picture of their family, standing in front of a cabin. Protection against evidence, perhaps, or a trophy. Kevin photographed everything, then carefully replaced the padlock, leaving it hanging to appear untouched to a casual observer. As he prepared to leave, movement in the distance caught his eye. Wendell's truck returning earlier than expected. Kevin slipped into the woods, circling wide around the clearing. From behind a thick stand of pines, he watched as Wendell unloaded his fishing gear, then made a phone call. Though too distant to hear the conversation, Kevin could read the man's body language: animated, excited, impatient. Wendell entered the cabin, emerging minutes later with a shovel and heading into the woods in the opposite direction from where Kevin hid. Curiosity overcoming caution, Kevin followed at a safe distance. After 15 minutes of hiking, Wendell stopped in a small clearing and began digging near the base of a distinctive lightning-struck tree. Kevin used his camera zoom to observe as Wendell uncovered what appeared to be a waterproof container. From it, he removed several bundles wrapped in plastic. Kevin photographed the entire sequence, including when Wendell opened one bundle to reveal stacks of cash. After reburying the container, Wendell returned to the cabin. Kevin waited until dusk before making his way back to his vehicle. As he drove the treacherous mountain roads in the gathering darkness, his mind raced with implications. This wasn't just an affair. It wasn't even just a planned disappearance. The cabin, the cleaning supplies, the tarps, they all pointed to something much darker. Kevin suspected Lynette and Wendell had already killed before, and they were planning to kill again. 3 days later, Kevin executed the next phase of his plan. He'd sent Ari to stay with Delora for the weekend, citing a parents' getaway that Lynette knew nothing about. When she protested, he calmly mentioned he'd already arranged for Ari to be dropped off at a special wilderness camp with that guide you work with sometimes on Sunday. The panic in Lynette's eyes confirmed his suspicions. Their plans required Ari, and now their schedule was disrupted. "I thought we could use some time alone," Kevin said over dinner, pouring her another glass of wine. "Reconnect." Lynette's smile didn't reach her eyes. "That's thoughtful, but I have so much work this weekend. Just tonight." Then, Kevin insisted gently. "How often do we get the house to ourselves?" He'd set the stage: carefully romantic dinner, music, candles, and a hidden camera recording everything from the bookshelf. Another recorded from the kitchen. As they ate, Kevin guided the conversation skillfully. "Remember when we first met? That environmental conference in Portland?" Lynette relaxed slightly, the wine loosening her guard. "You were so serious, explaining electrical grid efficiency to anyone who would listen. And you were the only one who actually seemed interested," Kevin smiled. "Though I later realized you were just being polite." "No, I found it fascinating," she said, then added with a slight edge, "Back then, anyway." Kevin nodded thoughtfully. "We've both changed over the years, haven't we? That's what people do, Kevin. They evolve, and sometimes grow apart." Lynette's eyes narrowed slightly. "What are you asking exactly?" Kevin kept his expression open, vulnerable. "I've just been feeling like there's distance between us lately. I wondered if you felt it too." She studied him for a moment, then sighed. "I suppose there is. Any idea why?" Lynette took another sip of wine. "People want different things as they age. What satisfied me at 28 doesn't necessarily fulfill me at 36. What would fulfill you now?" Kevin asked quietly. Something in his tone must have alerted her. Lynette set down her glass, suddenly wary. "Why all these questions, Kevin?" He maintained his facade of innocence. "Just trying to understand where we stand. Where you stand. Where I stand." Her voice took on a defensive edge. "With us. With this life we've built." Kevin gestured around the dining room. "Our home. Our family. Our future." Lynette's laugh held no humor. "This life you've built, you mean? Your idea of home. Your vision of family." I thought it was our vision. Did you ever actually ask what I wanted? Her words carried years of resentment. Or did you just assume I'd be happy with your safe, predictable plans? Your safe, predictable career? Your safe, predictable life? Kevin absorbed the verbal blow without flinching. And what do you want, Lynette? Help me understand. Freedom, she said, the word escaping like she couldn't contain it any longer. Adventure, passion, things you've never understood. With Wendell, Kevin asked softly. Lynette froze, wine glass halfway to her lips. What did you say? Wendell Pace, your wilderness guide friend. Kevin kept his voice measured, hiding his triumph as her composure cracked. Is he the one who understands what you want? How do you? She stopped herself, recalibrating. We work together on environmental initiatives. That's all. In the garage at 1 a.m.? In your robe. Kevin watched her face pale. Those initiatives must be very important. You've been spying on me. Anger replaced her shock. Protecting my family, Kevin corrected. Though I'm starting to wonder if that's what you were doing with the blood-stained tarp in your new SUV. Lynette's glass slipped from her fingers, spilling red wine like blood across the white tablecloth. You don't know what you're talking about. I think I do, Kevin said, his voice hardening slightly. The cabin in the Cascades. The offshore accounts. The new identities for you and Ari. You've been in my things. Her voice rose sharply. Just connecting dots. Kevin leaned forward, like the dot where a hiker disappeared during one of Wendell's tours. Or the dot where your previous fiancé vanished in those same mountains. Those were accidents, Lynette hissed. Tragic accidents. Were they? Like the accident you and Wendell were planning for me. Lynette stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You've lost your mind. Have I? Kevin remained seated, infuriatingly calm. Tell me, what did you mean when you told Wendell about getting rid of the burden? Or when you mentioned the cabin that's already cleaned? She stared at him, calculation replacing panic in her eyes. After a long moment, her posture shifted, the defensive act dropping away to reveal something colder beneath. How long have you known? She asked, voice steady. Long enough. Lynette laughed softly, shaking her head. And here I thought you were oblivious. The dutiful husband, so wrapped up in his circuits and systems that he couldn't see what was happening in his own home. I see clearly now, Kevin said. I'm just not sure I understand. Why, Lynette? What did I do to deserve this? Deserve? She scoffed. It's not about what you deserve. It's about what I deserve. Do you have any idea how suffocating this life is? How mind-numbingly boring? Our marriage is boring to you. Everything about you is boring, she spat. You're like a trained dog. Go to work, come home, take care of Ari, repeat. No passion, no excitement. Just duty and routine. Kevin absorbed her cruelty without visible reaction. And Wendell is different. Wendell is everything you're not. Lynette's eyes gleamed with a fervor Kevin had never seen directed at him. He's alive. He takes risks. He makes me feel alive. Alive enough to kill for him. Her smile was chilling. You don't understand the kind of connection we have. I understand it's worth abandoning your son for. I'm not abandoning Ari, she snapped. He's coming with us. He'll have a much more exciting life than the one you've planned for him: college, career, suburban mediocrity. So the plan was to eliminate me and disappear with my son? Lynette considered him for a long moment, then shrugged as if discarding a useless pretense. You were never supposed to know. It would have been quick, painless even. How considerate, Kevin said dryly. Don't you dare judge me, she hissed. I've never loved this dull life you built. I've been pretending for years. With Wendell, I could be who I really am. And who is that exactly? A murderer, a survivor, she corrected. Someone who takes what she wants instead of settling for scraps. Those are our son's words you're dismissing, Kevin said, his voice finally betraying anger. Our life together. Our family. Family. Lynette laughed bitterly. We're not a family, Kevin. We're a prison. And I'm breaking out. With stolen money, forged documents, and a trail of bodies. With freedom, she insisted. Something you know nothing about. Kevin stood slowly, his height suddenly imposing. You've miscalculated, Lynette. I'm not the oblivious husband you thought I was. And I won't let you take my son. You can't stop what's already in motion, she said, backing toward the door. Wendell has connections you can't imagine. Trent has contingency plans for everything. We'll see about that. Lynette's expression shifted to one of wary assessment. What are you going to do? Go to the police? With what evidence? Kevin smiled thinly. I haven't decided yet. But remember this moment, Lynette. The moment you showed me exactly who you are. She stared at him, suddenly uncertain. You're bluffing. You don't have anything concrete. Get out of my house, Kevin said quietly. Pack a bag and go. But understand this: if you try to contact Ari, if you come near my son again, I will destroy you in ways you can't imagine. He's my son too, she snarled. Not anymore. Kevin's voice was steel. Not after what you've planned. For a moment, they locked eyes, predator recognizing predator. Then Lynette turned and stormed upstairs. 30 minutes later, she left with a suitcase, slamming the door behind her. Kevin waited until her car disappeared down the street before moving to his office. He downloaded the evening's recordings to his encrypted drive, adding them to his growing collection of evidence. Then he made a phone call. It's done, he told Delora. She confessed. Keep Ari with you until I call again. Be careful, the older woman warned. She'll go straight to Wendell. I'm counting on it, Kevin replied. The following morning, Kevin rose before dawn and drove to a different hardware store, this one 80 miles away. Using cash and a baseball cap to obscure his face from security cameras, he purchased disposable gloves, a prepaid phone, and various other supplies. Next, he visited 3 different electronic shops, assembling components that couldn't be traced to a single purchase. By noon, he had everything he needed. That Kevin's first target was Wendell's truck. Using information from his surveillance, he knew Wendell taught wilderness survival classes on Monday mornings at a community center in South Eugene. While Wendell was inside, Kevin slipped into the parking lot and placed a small package beneath the truck seat, using a Slim Jim tool to gain entry without leaving marks. The package contained 2 burner phones programmed with text discussing the merchandise and the drop. The language was deliberately vague, but suggestive of illegal trafficking. One phone included photos of the child's backpack Kevin had seen in Lynette's SUV. His next stop was the office of Trent Voss, attorney at law. Kevin didn't enter the building, but located Voss's Audi in the reserved parking space. A casual stroll past the vehicle gave him the opportunity to place a magnetic GPS tracker under the rear bumper identical to the one police departments used for surveillance. Back home, Kevin used a secure laptop to create an anonymous email account. From it, he sent a message to the Eugene Police Department with the subject line "Suspicious Activity in Wilderness Areas, Possible Connection to Missing Persons." The body contained carefully worded concerns about guided tours in the Cascades, mentioning Wendell's name and the dates of previously unsolved disappearances. He included just enough detail to seem credible without revealing his identity or how he'd obtained the information. But a similar message went to the Oregon State Police, this one focusing on possible financial crimes connected to environmental grants. He mentioned both Lynette and Trent Voss, suggesting investigators might find irregularities in the funds allocated to conservation projects in the Eastern Cascades. Lastly, Kevin drove to the cabin he'd discovered. Wendell's truck wasn't present, likely he was with Lynette, planning their next move. Kevin worked quickly, placing the bloodied tarp he'd taken from Lynette's SUV in Wendell's outdoor gear storage. He added a strand of Ari's hair and a torn piece of children's clothing purchased from a thrift store in the shed behind the cabin. Kevin placed a small electronic device that would activate remotely when triggered by his phone. It would send an anonymous emergency signal to local authorities, bringing them directly to the shed and its incriminating contents. That evening, Kevin received a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet tomorrow. The coffee shop on Willamette. 10 a.m. He didn't respond. Instead, he called Delora. "How's Ari?" "Safe," she assured him. "We're baking cookies and watching nature documentaries. He misses you." "I miss him too, but he can't come home yet. Things are in motion." "Your wife came by earlier," Dolores said quietly. "I didn't answer the door, but she left a note for Ari. Very emotional, saying how much she loves him and needs to see him." "Keep it," Kevin instructed. "Evidence." "Did she seem to be alone?" "There was a truck parked down the street. Couldn't see who was in it." "They're watching the house," Kevin concluded. Stay inside with Ari. Don't let him near windows. Frank's old service weapon is still in the safe, Dolores said calmly. I remember how to use it. Let's hope that won't be necessary. The next morning, Kevin didn't go to the coffee shop. Instead, he drove to the police station and asked to speak with a detective, preferably one specializing in missing persons cases. He was shown to an interview room where Detective Maya Sullivan greeted him with professional courtesy. How can I help you, Mr. Knox? Kevin placed a thumb drive on the table. I have reason to believe my wife and her associates are planning something illegal, possibly violent. Sullivan's expression remained neutral. That's a serious claim. What kind of evidence do you have? Recordings of conversations, financial documents, photographs of suspicious items. Kevin met her gaze steadily. I'm an electrical engineer, detective. I deal in systems and patterns. When I started seeing patterns in my wife's behavior that didn't make sense, I investigated. And you gathered this evidence yourself? A note of skepticism entered her voice. I did, which means you'll need to verify it independently for court purposes. Kevin pushed the drive toward her. But should give you enough probable cause for warrants. Why not come to us earlier? Because until recently, I only had suspicions. Now I have my wife's confession that she was planning to get rid of me and disappear with my son. Sullivan picked up the drive. I'll review this. But Mr. Knox, if you're in the middle of a contentious divorce, this isn't about divorce, Kevin interrupted firmly. This is about stopping a crime before it happens. Please review the materials. Focus on Wendell Pace and Trent Voss. There are connections to previous missing persons cases. As he left the station, Kevin noticed a familiar truck parked across the street Wendell's, with Lynette in the passenger seat. They'd followed him, exactly as he'd anticipated. Kevin drove directly to his attorney's office, a Vietnam veteran named James Carver who had helped several military families with legal issues. Inside, he handed over another copy of his evidence. File for emergency custody of Ari, he instructed. Based on evidence of Lynette's planning to flee the country with him using falsified documents. Carver reviewed the materials, his weathered face growing increasingly grim. This goes beyond family court, Kevin. There's evidence of criminal conspiracy here. I've already been to the police, Kevin assured him. But I need to protect my son legally while they investigate. Can you file today? Within the hour, Carver promised. Where's Ari now? With a trusted neighbor. Safe. Keep him there until we have the custody order. Carver stood and shook Kevin's hand. I've known you for 8 years, son. Never figured you for this kind of situation. Neither did I, Kevin replied honestly. But I'll do whatever it takes to protect my son. That afternoon, Kevin's phone buzzed with a text from Delora. Police just took someone from the truck parked on our street. Female officer came to door after, asked questions about your wife. The pieces were falling into place. Kevin checked the tracking app he'd installed to monitor the GPS on Voss's car. The attorney was moving rapidly, heading east out of Eugene toward the cabin. Perfect. Kevin activated the remote signal device he'd planted in the shed. Within 30 minutes, his anonymous tip would bring authorities directly to the incriminating evidence. As dusk fell, Kevin parked outside his home, watching the familiar house that no longer felt like his. Inside those walls, he'd built what he thought was a stable life, a sanctuary for his family. Now it was the scene of the greatest betrayal he'd ever experienced. His phone rang Detective Sullivan. Mr. Knox, we've taken Wendell Pace into custody on suspicion of evidence tampering and potential involvement in a missing persons case from 5 years ago. Evidence tampering. Burner phones with suspicious communications were found in his vehicle. Combined with your evidence and some previously closed case files we've reopened, it was enough for an arrest. Kevin allowed himself a small smile. What about my wife? She's being questioned, but not detained at this time. However, I should inform you that state police have just raided a cabin in the Cascades registered to an LLC connected to attorney Trent Voss. They found concerning materials that may be linked to several investigations. I see, Kevin said, his voice neutral. Mr. Knox, Sullivan's tone turned cautious. The timing of these developments is interesting. You wouldn't happen to know anything about anonymous tips received by multiple law enforcement agencies in the past 24 hours? I'm an electrical engineer, detective. I deal with facts and evidence, not anonymous tips. Of course. She paused. Your custody hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Judge Winters granted an emergency review based on the evidence presented by your attorney. Thank you for letting me know. One more thing, Mr. Knox. Stay away from Wendell Pace, Trent Voss, and your wife until this investigation is complete. Whatever is happening here, it's bigger than a domestic dispute. After hanging up, Kevin sent a message to Delora, coming to get Ari. We'll stay at a hotel tonight. His son ran to him the moment Delora opened the door, small arms wrapping tightly around Kevin's waist. Dad, I missed you. I missed you too, buddy. Kevin knelt, examining his son's face. Everything okay here? Ari nodded. Mrs. Brandt makes good cookies. But I want to go home. Soon, Kevin promised. We need to stay somewhere else just for tonight. As they prepared to leave, Delora pulled Kevin aside. There's something you should know. After the police left, I remembered an old recording Frank made. She handed him a USB drive. 5 years ago, your wife was at a neighborhood cookout while you were deployed. She'd had too much wine, started bragging to a girlfriend about watching someone vanish. Frank was suspicious, recorded it on his phone without her knowing. Kevin stared at the small drive. Her ex? The one who disappeared hiking? Delora nodded grimly. The voice on this matches the description of events from that case. Frank kept it, hoping to find more evidence someday. And now it sounds an awful lot like a confession. Delora's eyes were hard. I've made a copy for the detective who came today. Kevin pocketed the drive. Thank you, Delora, for everything. Just keep that boy safe, she replied, hugging Ari goodbye. Some people don't deserve second chances. In the car, Ari leaned against Kevin's arm. Is Mom in trouble? Kevin chose his words carefully. Mom made some bad choices, buddy. The kind that have serious consequences. Is she go to jail? I don't know yet. But no matter what happens, you'll be okay. I promise. Ari was quiet for a moment. She wanted to take me away from you. Kevin glanced at his son, surprised by his perception. How did you know that? I heard her talking to the man with the beard. They didn't know I was listening. Ari's small face was solemn beyond his years. I told her I wouldn't go anywhere without you, and she got really mad. Kevin squeezed his son's shoulder. You don't have to worry about that anymore. We're staying together, no matter what. As they drove toward the hotel, Kevin's phone buzzed with a news alert. He checked it at a stoplight. Breaking, local attorney and environmental lobbyist implicated in fraud scheme. The first dominoes were falling. By morning, the story would be public, the scandal unavoidable. His revenge was unfolding perfectly methodical, precise, and utterly devastating. Kevin stood with Ari in the court hallway, waiting for their custody hearing to begin. His attorney, James Carver, reviewed documents beside them, occasionally nodding with satisfaction. The judges already reviewed the evidence, Carver explained quietly. With Wendell Pace in custody and the investigation expanding, this should be straightforward. Kevin nodded, adjusting Ari's tie. You look very handsome, buddy. Do I have to talk to Mom? Ari asked, anxiety creasing his young face. No, Kevin assured him. You just sit with me. Mr. Carver will do all the talking. Before they could enter the courtroom, Detective Sullivan approached, her expression grim but professional. Mr. Knox, I need a moment. Carver nodded to a court officer, who took Ari a few steps away. What's happened? Kevin asked. Oregon State Police raided a backwoods expedition led by Wendell Pace early this morning, Sullivan explained. They found evidence connecting him to at least 2 missing persons cases from the past 5 years. 2. Kevin raised an eyebrow. Possibly more. Sullivan lowered her voice. His electronics contained disturbing materials. And we've identified the child's backpack from your photos. It belonged to a 9-year-old who disappeared in Washington State last year. Kevin felt sick. My God, there's more, Sullivan continued. Based on financial records obtained through warrants, we've uncovered what appears to be a significant fraud scheme involving environmental grants and conservation land funds. Both your wife and attorney Trent Voss are implicated. How deep does it go? Millions of dollars. Projects that existed only on paper. Conservation lands purchased at inflated prices through shell companies that trace back to Voss. Sullivan's expression hardened. Your wife's environmental lobbying position gave them political cover and inside information on upcoming land acquisitions. And the money, offshore accounts primarily. We're working with federal authorities now. Kevin absorbed this information with outward calm. What happens next? Multiple felony charges for all involved. Mr. Pace remains in custody. We're seeking an arrest warrant for Mr. Voss, who appears to have fled the state. She hesitated. Regarding your wife, I should inform you that she'll be taken into custody following this hearing, regardless of the outcome. I understand. As Sullivan walked away, Carver rejoined him. I couldn't help overhearing. This changes things considerably. For the better, I hope, Kevin said. Without question, Carver nodded toward the courtroom doors. Let's get this done. Inside, Kevin was surprised to see several reporters seated in the back row. Word had spread faster than he anticipated. Lynette sat at the respondents' table, looking composed but isolated without Voss beside her. A court-appointed attorney whispered urgently in her ear. The hearing proceeded quickly. Judge Winters reviewed the evidence, including the recorded confession and financial documents showing Lynette's plans to flee the country with Ari using falsified passports. When presented with the police investigation findings, Winters' expression darkened visibly. Given the severity of the evidence and ongoing criminal investigations, the judge announced, I am granting immediate full custody of Ari Knox to his father, Kevin Knox. Ms. Lynette Knox is prohibited from any contact with a minor child pending resolution of criminal charges. Lynette stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I'm his mother. Ms. Knox, please sit down, her attorney urged. No. Lynette's composure shattered. This is all lies. Kevin set me up because he was jealous of Wendell. The judge banged his gavel. Ms. Knox, control yourself or I'll have you removed. Kevin remained silent, his arm around Ari's shoulders. You planned this, Lynette hissed across the courtroom. You manipulated evidence. Two deputies approached from the back of the room. One leaned to whisper something to Lynette's attorney, who paled visibly. Your Honor, the attorney interrupted, I've just been informed that there's an arrest warrant for my client. May we have a moment? The judge nodded grimly. Take 15 minutes. Court is in recess. As they exited, Kevin noticed reporters already making calls, their expressions eager with the scent of scandal. By evening, the story would dominate local news. By tomorrow, it would reach state and possibly national outlets. Outside, Carver handed Kevin a thick folder. Full custody order, signed and executed. Also restraining orders against both Lynette and Wendell. No one can legally take Ari from you now. Thank you, Kevin said simply. Dad, Ari tugged at his sleeve. Can we go home now? Yes, buddy. We can go home. As they walked toward the parking lot, Kevin spotted Detective Sullivan escorting Lynette to a police cruiser, reading her rights as photographers captured the moment. Lynette's eyes met his across the distance, hatred burning in them with an intensity that might once have unnerved him. Now, Kevin felt nothing but cold satisfaction. That evening, as Ari slept peacefully in his room, Kevin opened his laptop to find the story had indeed exploded. Local news websites featured Wendell's arrest photo alongside headlines about environmental fraud scheme linked to missing persons cases. Lynette's professional headshot from her lobbying firm appeared with captions about alleged accomplice in multi-million-dollar fraud. Anonymous sources were cited describing extensive evidence of financial wrongdoing and disturbing connections to unsolved disappearances. The environmental organization where Lynette had worked released a statement distancing themselves completely, claiming they had been deceived by a trusted employee. Kevin's phone rang, an unlisted number. Knox, he answered cautiously. It's Sullivan. Thought you should know. Trent Voss's car was found abandoned at Portland International Airport. We believe he's fled the country. The money, frozen most of it. Federal authorities are involved now. She paused. Your wife is requesting to speak with you. I have nothing to say to her. I figured as much. Sullivan hesitated. Look, Mr. Knox, I've been doing this job for 15 years. What's happening to your wife and her associates? It's thorough. Almost too thorough. Just as often is, Kevin replied evenly. Maybe so. Her tone was noncommittal. In any case, you should know that a recording surfaced today. Your neighbor, Mrs. Brandt, provided it to our department. It appears to connect your wife to another disappearance from before your marriage. Is that so? The recording suggests she may have been involved in the disappearance of her previous fiancé, Robert Keller. The case is being reopened. Kevin allowed himself a small smile. Detective Sullivan, do you believe in karma? I believe in evidence, she replied. And right now, all the evidence points to your wife being involved in multiple serious crimes. If there's anything else you know, I provided everything I have, Kevin said. Good night, detective. He hung up and walked to Ari's room, watching his son sleep peacefully. The boy seemed younger in sleep, unburdened by the knowledge of his mother's betrayal. Kevin vowed silently that he would protect that innocence as long as possible, would give Ari the stability and security that Lynette had been willing to destroy. Whatever guilt Kevin might have felt about his methodical dismantling of Lynette's life vanished when he looked at his son. Some actions were unforgivable. Some betrayals demanded consequences. Scene 2. Lynette cornered the following Wednesday. Kevin parked outside Willamette Elementary School, watching parents collect their children. He spotted familiar faces, mothers and fathers he'd known for years through school functions and playdates. They smiled and waved, unaware of how completely his world had transformed in 2 weeks. Ari's class emerged, and his son ran to him with a paper clutched proudly in his hand. Dad, I got an A on my science project. That's fantastic, buddy. Kevin examined the paper with genuine interest. The water cycle, huh? Great work. As they walked toward the car, a sleek sedan pulled into the pickup lane. Lynette stepped out, drawing immediate attention from nearby parents who whispered behind their hands. Kevin tensed, placing a protective hand on Ari's shoulder. Wait here. He approached Lynette, maintaining enough distance that Ari couldn't overhear. You shouldn't be here. Lynette looked haggard beneath her carefully applied makeup. Her designer clothes couldn't disguise the toll of the past week, the arrests, the media coverage, the mounting evidence. He's my son, she said, her voice tight. I have a right to see him. Not according to the custody order and restraining order, Kevin replied calmly. Judge Winters was very clear about that. I may bail, Kevin. I'm not a fugitive. You're a criminal defendant charged with multiple felonies, including conspiracy and fraud, and now possibly murder. Kevin's voice remained low, controlled. You have no rights regarding Ari until the courts say otherwise. Lynette's composure cracked. You can't keep him from me. I'm his mother. You forfeited that privilege when you planned to disappear with him using falsified documents. When you conspired to murder me. Kevin took out his phone. Should I call Detective Sullivan? I'm sure she'd be interested to know you're violating court orders. Parents were openly staring now. The school pickup transformed into uncomfortable theater. Lynette noticed their attention, her face flushing with humiliation. You set me up, she hissed. You planted evidence. You manipulated everything to destroy me. No, Lynette, you destroyed yourself. Kevin's eyes were cold. I simply ensured there would be consequences. You can't ruin my life over one mistake. One mistake. Kevin's voice hardened. No, Lynette, you made a decision. I made a judgment. He turned to walk away, but Lynette grabbed his arm. My accounts are frozen. My reputation is ruined. My career is over. Are you satisfied? Not yet, Kevin replied honestly. But justice is still unfolding, isn't it? They found DNA evidence at Wendell's cabin. They're reopening the case of your ex-fiancée's disappearance. The pieces are connecting quickly now. The color drained from Lynette's face. What have you done? Nothing compared to what you planned to do. Kevin removed her hand from his arm. Now leave before I call the police. As if on cue, a patrol car turned onto the street, moving slowly toward the school. Lynette noticed it and backed toward her car. This isn't over, she warned. For you it is. Kevin walked back to Ari, who watched the exchange with worried eyes. Why was Mom here? He asked as they drove away. Kevin chose his words carefully. She wanted to see you, but the judge said she can't right now because of the bad choices she made. Is she going to jail? Probably, buddy. For a long time. Ari was quiet for several blocks. I'm sad, but I'm not scared anymore. Kevin reached over to squeeze his son's hand. That's what matters most. That evening, the news reported that Lynette Knox had been arrested again for violating the terms of her bail by attempting contact with a protected minor. Her bail was revoked, and she would remain in custody until trial. Kevin received a call from James Carver. The district attorney wants to meet tomorrow. They're preparing charges against your wife for conspiracy to commit murder, yours specifically. What evidence convinced them? The recordings you made, the materials found at the cabin, and something new. Wendell Pace is talking, trying to cut a deal. Kevin felt a surge of satisfaction. He's turning on her. Apparently, he's claiming she was the mastermind. Says she approached him with a plan, not the other way around. Honor among thieves, Kevin said dryly. There's something else, Carver continued. Wendell told investigators about a storage unit rented under a false name. They found items belonging to at least 2 missing persons, including Robert Keller, your wife's ex-fiancé. DNA evidence being processed now, but it doesn't look good for Lynette. After hanging up, Kevin went to his office and opened his safe. Inside was the original encrypted drive containing all the evidence he'd gathered: the surveillance footage, the recordings, the photographs from the cabin. Everything that had set his revenge in motion. He placed it in a fireproof box, locked it, and returned it to the safe. The digital trail that led to Lynette's downfall was now secured, unreachable by anyone who might question his methods. Kevin felt no guilt, no hesitation about what he'd done. Lynette and her accomplices had planned to murder him and abduct his son. Their crimes extended beyond his family to other victims, other families destroyed by their actions. His revenge wasn't just personal, it was justice. 3 months passed. Winter settled over Eugene, bringing rain and early darkness. Kevin established new routines with RE therapy sessions twice weekly, karate classes, weekend hikes when weather permitted. Slowly, his son was healing, speaking more freely, laughing more often. Lynette remained in custody awaiting trial. Her attempts to secure bail repeatedly denied as new evidence emerged connecting her to past crimes. Wendell Pace had accepted a plea deal in exchange for testimony against both Lynette and the still fugitive Trent Voss on a stormy December evening. Kevin answered a knock at his door to find Delora Brandt standing on his porch, clutching a waterproof folder. "I need to show you something," she said without preamble. "It's important." In his kitchen, Delora spread several documents across the table. "I've been going through the last of Frank's files. Found these in a locked drawer I didn't have the key for until recently." Kevin examined the paper's police reports, timelines, photographs of a smiling young man with his arm around a younger Lynette. "Robert Keller," Delora explained. "Lynette's fiancé before you. The one who disappeared hiking. They've reopened the case," Kevin noted. "Found his personal effects in a storage unit connected to Wendell." "Yes, but there's more." Delora pulled out a small digital recorder. "Frank recorded a conversation at a neighborhood party about 5 years ago, while you were deployed overseas. Lynette had too much wine, got loose-lipped with a friend on our back patio. Frank was nearby, pretending to nap, but actually recording. She pressed play. Lynette's voice emerged, slightly slurred but unmistakable. Just watched him vanish. 1 minute there, the next gone. Nobody ever thinks to look in the right places. Everyone assumes people get lost in the wilderness all the time." A second woman's voice. "God, Lynn, you're scaring me. You sound like you. Like I what? Like I know something? Maybe I do. Maybe some people deserve to disappear." The recording ended. Kevin stared at the device. She was talking about Robert Keller. "Frank thought so," Delora confirmed. "He spent years trying to build enough evidence for the police to reopen the case. Now, this recording matches the physical evidence they found in that storage unit." "When did you give this to the police?" 2 days ago." Delora's eyes were hard. "Detective Sullivan called this morning. They're adding first-degree murder charges against your wife for Keller's death." Kevin absorbed this information silently. "There's something else," Delora continued. "Frank suspected Lynette wasn't working alone back then, before she met Wendell. He believed she had another accomplice for the Keller disappearance. Trent Voss." Delora shook her head. "A woman. Frank only had a partial description from a witness who saw Lynette with another female at a trailhead the day Keller vanished. Never identified her. Why tell me this? Because Lynette's going away for life, Kevin. Multiple murders, conspiracy, fraud, the evidence is overwhelming. But if she had another accomplice from before Wendell, that person is still out there. Delora gathered her papers. Frank would have wanted the whole truth. After she left, Kevin sat alone in his kitchen, turning over this new information. Another accomplice. Someone who had helped Lynette long before Wendell entered the picture. Someone who had never been caught. His phone buzzed with a text from Detective Sullivan. Need to speak with you tomorrow. New charges being filed against your wife. First-degree murder. Kevin replied with a simple acknowledgement, then went to check on Ari. His son slept peacefully, wrapped in his Star Wars blanket, a half-finished Lego spaceship on his bedside table. The night light cast soft shadows across his young face. Whatever darkness had touched their lives, whatever secrets still lurked in Lynette's past, Kevin would protect his son from all of it. That was the promise he'd made the moment he'd seen that blood-stained tarp in the trunk, a vow as unbreakable as the bond between father and son. 6 months later, on a bright spring morning, Kevin and Ari stood on the porch of a refurbished cabin in the Eastern Cascades. The same cabin that had once been central to Lynette and Wendell's plans now served a different purpose entirely. What do you think of the sign, buddy? Kevin asked, pointing to the wooden placard mounted beside the door. New Beginnings Retreat, a healing space for families in transition. Ari nodded approvingly. It looks good, Dad. Can I put my painting up inside? That's the perfect finishing touch. Inside, the cabin bore no resemblance to its former state. The dark, secretive space had been transformed with light colors, comfortable furniture, and large windows that showcased the mountain views. What had once been a place of darkness was now filled with light. Kevin's phone rang. James Carver calling with the news they'd been waiting for. It's official, the attorney announced. The judge approved your proposal for the therapy retreat. Lynette's frozen assets have been released as restitution, specifically designated for the retreat's operations. Perfect timing, Kevin replied. Our first families arrive next weekend. How's Ari handling everything? Kevin watched his son carefully hanging his bear, painting on the wall a powerful image of a large bear standing protectively over a cub, with wolves slinking away in the distance. Better every day. His therapist says his progress is remarkable. In the final sentencing, the judge threw the book at her. Kevin said without emotion. Life without parole for Robert Keller's murder. Consecutive sentences for conspiracy and fraud. Wendell got 30 years with his plea deal. Trent Voss is still missing, but Interpol has a global alert for him. Justice served, Carver noted, though some might say your justice was more thorough than the courts could have managed. Kevin didn't respond directly. I'll send you photos of the retreat once it's fully operational. After hanging up, he joined Ari at the wall where the painting now hung prominently. Is it straight? Ari asked anxiously. Perfect, Kevin assured him. Tell me about it again. Ari pointed to the figures in his painting. That's you, the big bear. And I'm a little bear. You're keeping me safe from the wolves who wanted to hurt us. That's right, Kevin said softly. That's my job. And this is our special place now, Ari continued, where other kids and dads can come to feel safe too. Exactly. Kevin had used his engineering skills to redesign the cabin, converting it into a therapeutic retreat for single fathers and their children affected by domestic trauma. The irony wasn't lost on him. The location intended for his murder now served as a healing space, funded by Lynette's seized assets. Later that evening, as Ari played outside under Kevin's watchful eye, Detective Sullivan's SUV pulled up the gravel driveway. She stepped out, surveying the transformed property with evident surprise. Quite a change, she remarked, joining Kevin on the porch. Fresh start, he replied simply. What brings you all the way out here? Closure. Sullivan handed him a folder. Final case reports on your wife's conviction. Thought you might want them for your records. Kevin accepted the folder without opening it. Appreciated. I have to admit, Sullivan said carefully, when this all started, I had questions about the evidence. The timing. How perfectly everything fell into place. Sometimes justice works that way. Sometimes. Sullivan's gaze was searching. You know, we never did identify Lynette's female accomplice from the Keller case. The mystery woman at the trailhead. Kevin kept his expression neutral. Some mysteries stay unsolved. True. Sullivan turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you've created something good here. Turning darkness into light, that's rare. After she drove away, Kevin called Ari in for dinner. They sat at the rustic dining table, father and son together, the mountains visible through the windows, the future stretching before them untainted by Lynette's betrayal. Later, standing on the cabin's porch while Ari readied for bed, Kevin looked over the mountains beyond the cabin, feeling the weight of all that had happened, all he had orchestrated to protect his son and bring justice to those who had planned his destruction. I wasn't forged by betrayal, he whispered to the silent forest. I was revealed by it. Inside, Ari called for his goodnight hug. Kevin turned from the darkening landscape and went to his son, closing the door on the past and embracing the future they would build together stronger, wiser, and finally safe.